97% of women said they would rather meet their partner offline than online, and 95% of women said they wish they were approached more often in real life.
How much is too much questions? How much is not enough questions?
I would rather you be asking too many questions than not enough questions. Usually when someone's asking too many questions, it's because they're jumping around from topic to topic and it's not a flow. But if you ask one question and then you ask a follow-up question about that thing, and then you ask how that thing made her feel, that's more of a conversation. The question you should be asking is, what types of questions are you asking? Are they facilitating a conversation, or is it rapid fire?
What is up, guys? We are doing a massive giveaway that I want to share with you. All you need to do is subscribe to the channel for a chance to win a Mito X series or Mito Pro X series from Mito. Red light is a son of a bitch. We're giving this away. This is $450, very exciting. And we are also giving away a molecular hydrogen maker. I love this guy as well. It's really great for reducing inflammation, tastes delicious. And the red light I use all the time uses my night light in my living room. It's great for collagen repair. It's great for your eyes, great for your skin. It's awesome. It is a total of about a $700 value of the giveaway. All you gotta do is subscribe between now to the month of August. We'll announce at the end of August. We'll announce it here as well as on the Instagram page labeled Aaron Alexander. That is my name. Subscribe, win some stuff. Enjoy the conversation.
We're here. Blaine, thank you for making this happen.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I appreciate you. So, Dating with Blaine is your moniker, your handle.
Dating by Blaine.
Dating by Blaine, sorry.
Close.
What about breaking up with Blaine? Or by Blaine?
Maybe I should start that. It's definitely part of the relationship process many times.
Yeah. How does one navigate decoupling or departnering with a human being? And then that's like the kind of the death and into the rebirth of the dating by Blaine portion.
Yeah.
Well, how do we start with the breakup phase that everyone experiences at some point, I'd imagine, for the most part?
Yeah, most people absolutely do. A lot of clients who find me have come out of a relationship. It's funny, actually, they'll say like, yeah, it's weird, I broke up with my girlfriend and the next day you were served to me on Instagram. And I'm like, God, I love that Instagram algorithm. Yeah. One step ahead of it.
Yeah, they know.
Or even they were like on the cusp of breaking up and then my content started getting served to them.
Yeah.
How you break up and what that looks like is so dependent on the relationship you had. You know, if you were dating for a couple weeks or a few months, or if you were living together, cohabitating, financially, intertwined, that becomes a whole separate type of breakup.
Yeah.
And unwinding. So, that's sort of a spectrum of where one might be and what would affect how that would happen.
Mm-hmm. And so what would you, so I'm experiencing a dating, a breakup presently in the last month.
Sorry to hear that.
I think it's really beautiful. Like what I find with breakups is it opens up aspects of myself that were kind of covered through like the comfort of relationship. And I think the breaking portion also is an opportunity of like an opening to aspects of myself that I'm like, oh my God, I haven't known that I needed to address this part until the actual like rupture transpired. So I appreciate you saying that, and I actually really do genuinely see it as like a quite like beautiful thing, like a graduation of sorts. What are your thoughts on how to navigate the breakup from the lens of like, do you just go straight to no contact? Do you kind of like wean away? Do you stay kind of sort of friendly? Is there some type of like rules or regulations on how to healthily navigate a breakup, generally speaking, from your perspective?
Yeah, so it's sort of when people also want, okay, what are the rules of a relationship? When should you have sex? When should you move in together? When do you say I love you? And the reality is, just like with a breakup, there aren't any hard and fast rules. And even breakup to breakup, relationship to relationship, it is going to be different. So, which is what makes it challenging.
Should you have sex after the breakup?
Yeah. Again, depends. Probably not. You can.
Already messed that one up.
Does that complicate things usually? Does that continue to keep feelings involved? Yes. Does that happen a lot? Yes. Have we all been there? Probably, you know, because if there was a handbook, it would make everything a lot easier. But that's what makes relationships so challenging is you're navigating your feelings, you're navigating someone else's feelings that might be different from what they're saying, how they're actually feeling. So it's like, how do you decide what to do? I would say some general principles are less contact is better. And that's hard because you're essentially depriving yourself of this dopamine that you were addicted to, which is the feeling of the other person oftentimes.
Sure.
Even if it was a bad relationship and it was fighting or there was toxicity in it or even an abusive relationship, it's still hard to break what you're used to.
Yeah.
And that is why we continue to often talk to someone, even though maybe we've recognized that they aren't good for us. So the sooner and the more, in my opinion, that you can start to distance yourself and figure out who you are without them and how you're going to spend your time, if they're not feeling it, the better. And granted, easier said than done. The longer you've been together, the harder that may be, the more things you need to unwind. And if you have children together, then forget it. You know, like you're now talking to this, you have to talk to this person for potentially the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But I would say like taking children out of it, like let's say you're not even marriage. So you're not even having to like, you know, interface with lawyers. It's just a few steps before that. The more you can do a clean break, I would say, the better off both parties tend to be able to move on.
Something that transpires with a breakup, it's probably one of the most emotional, like moving things that a person can go through because there's just so much there. How would you suggest a person addresses the inevitable feelings that arise within a breakup?
So I'm a big fan of therapy. I'm not a therapist, which I'm very clear when I work with people, you know, because sometimes they'll come and I can tell like they're treating me like I'm like, listen, I'm a big fan of therapy, not who I am. You should get a therapist. I'm more focused on more like tactical, how we are going to do things in relation to your dating life. But I think for anybody who's going through a breakup or just dealing with something not with another person, seeking professional therapy to help work through those challenges is always going to be beneficial.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, something that I'm aware of within myself in relationship that would lead to a codependent style relationship, I think is there's work within myself of being alone that I have avoided for the most part throughout my life. And I think this is probably resonant with a lot of people. But reaching out to various different distractive ploys as a way to escape the inevitable sensations that arise within me, that really is just it's a avoidance of just being comfortable with being alone with myself.
Absolutely. And I think you see that all the time with whether it's alcohol or drugs or, you know, even specific hobbies or another person. Being alone is challenging. But I think when you...
And rewarding.
Exactly. And if you aren't able to be on the more equipped you are to be comfortable on your own, the better you are going to be in a partnership because you aren't going to be relying on that person to be that distraction.
Yeah.
And so they can actually be the role that they're meant to be and that you know, in a relationship you want them to be, which is an addition.
Yeah.
And that goes also for any sort of challenges one person might be facing, whether it's, you know, if they are not whole on their own, whether it's financially or physically or emotionally, and they need that other person to be that support system for them, that is going to create an imbalance and either lead to an unhappy relationship, something that can be worked on, but is going to require a lot of work together and both parties being committed to it, or a failed relationship. It's very hard if one person isn't whole in one area to then, you know, coexist with somebody else.
Do you think, what's the likelihood of, because that was the nature of our, my previous dynamic. And so there was parts where we both were leaning on each other in different ways. What is the probability in relationship of that being worked through within the container of the relationship compared to like, oh, y'all really need to split and sort this out in order for you to actually step into what could be an interdependent relationship?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm qualified to speak to the likelihood or possibility one way or the other, but just from what I've witnessed, what I've personally experienced, what I see with clients, I just know you're going to have a better relationship if it's worked through. And I think a lot of people actually never work through and just stay together and are in unhappy relationships. Because I think that's something that sometimes single people forget is because I work with a lot of single men, they'll look around and be like, everyone's in a relationship. I'm like, okay, but are those the relationships that you would even want?
Yeah.
Like, not every relationship is good, or would be a relationship that you would find fulfilling. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And I when I work with clients, I also say that it's like, hey, if you just wanted to get a girlfriend, we could find you a girlfriend tomorrow. But you don't want just any old girl to like be willing to date you. You're looking for someone who you connect with emotionally, someone who you're attracted to, someone who you're excited to introduce to your friends and family. And finding someone of high quality takes time and some luck. So, it's not unreasonable that you're going to have to put in the work. And then even if you're doing everything 100% right, it still might take longer than you want it to.
So the intrinsic foundational aspects for a guy or a gal finding partnership, I would imagine a lot of what the questions that you are asked is much more strategic and kind of like, what do I do? I feel like likely the more invisible intrinsic aspects of work within oneself actually is like the meat of what one would do in order to be open to a partner.
Yeah.
That actually would be like a loving, stable, interdependent dynamic. What are those invisible qualities that you probably don't get asked about a lot?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So when I work with a client, I have one of my most popular courses. It's 5 modules, and the first 2 are much more theory, and it's about that self-work. And the last 3 are the logistical, like how-to section. And some people, they get ahead and they're like, I don't want to talk about my feelings and how I feel about myself. I just want to start the action. It's like, you aren't going to have success with the logistical action-oriented side of things if you don't first address the things you don't see, which is your self-confidence, the value you put in yourself, your emotional stability, your ability to know that you are a catch, and also to connect with other people. These are things that aren't necessarily even quantifiable. Like, they are things that a partner is going to subconsciously clock about you. It's not like when a man approaches a woman, like, sure, she might think like, or talk with her friends like, oh, he was really confident. But more often than not, she's not thinking like, oh, he was confident or he wasn't confident, or he was self-assured or he wasn't self-assured. It's just a feeling and it's just a vibe that someone gives off. And that's not something you can fake. That's something you truly have to feel about yourself. Yeah. If you don't believe you're a catch and you don't believe you're worthy of dating this person that you are pursuing or that you're dating, it is not going to work out. How
does a person work on their own self-image and self-confidence?
So a lot of different ways. I think, a lot of the stuff you talk about bettering yourself applies here. And it depends also where they're struggling. One of my favorite ways and simplest and I think most fun ways that someone should work on their self is get good at hobbies and interests that you have. So it literally doesn't matter what it is. Maybe it's bowling, maybe it's trivia, maybe it's weightlifting, maybe it's pickleball. Whatever you choose to invest your time in, spend time being dedicated to that thing, getting good at that thing, building confidence in that thing. Because that confidence and that proving to yourself that you're capable of sticking with something and developing a skill is going to overflow into other areas of your life, and you're going to feel better about yourself, whatever that skill is.
Do you think that differs from a man to a woman, like the value of competence in particular?
I think it's really important for both men and women. I think women put more emphasis on a man's ability to provide, and those are actually character markers of someone who's going to provide for you. I'm not talking about your bank statement or even what career you have, but your ability to stick with something and be passionate about something and complete something tells her, okay, this guy has the skills to be a provider. And thinking it back to evolutionary biology, that's what women are looking for in a man, more so than what a man is looking for in a woman. Men are programmed to be more interested or put more weight on a woman's physical appearance. Guys care more about what women look like than women care about what men look like. And again, you bring that back to evolutionary biology. A man was looking for a woman who he could reproduce with. And a lot of what he could ascertain a lot of what he needs to know about whether or not this would be a potential mating partner by looking at a woman, where a woman cannot do the same for a man. She needs to see his behavior because she faces much higher consequences for a romantic relationship. She's saddled with a 9-month pregnancy, 18 years potentially, of raising offspring. So that's, I'm thinking caveman days, but a lot of those same principles, you can still see how they play out in modern dating, which I find really interesting.
So I think a very common concept, particularly with the gals, I would say probably the term gets thrown around more often than fellas, is like red flags. Mm-hmm. Red flag. That's a red flag.
I don't know. I hear guys say red flag a lot with the men I work with.
All right. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's just the gals I'm listening to and the guys I'm listening to. Regardless, the red flag concept is something that is, it's an outward facing concept. Mm-hmm. What are some of the inward facing red flags that we might not detect within ourselves that it could be valuable to be like, wait, shit, am I a red flag?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because there's things you can do that, might make someone else see you as a red flag. But I think what you're maybe asking is more like, okay, are there things I'm doing that are preventing me from finding somebody? Is that more the nature of the question?
I think every dynamic is... I like to believe that every dynamic, both parties are 100% accountable and responsible for the dynamic in their own way, because ultimately, we're bringing each other into our lives, so there was some resonance that transpired that brought us together, which I'm responsible for, like the creation of the thing. And I think we bring certain qualities and aspects out from our partner based off of, who we are. And I think that the dynamic of, or the game of pointing out as opposed to looking within, can stifle us from our own personal growth. And we can just kind of continue perpetuating this victim thing of I just can't find a good guy, I can't find a good girl. So I think that's kind of the question. Is there any indicators or markers that one would look within in relation to finding a partner?
Yeah. So the mistake or red flag I would see both parties making that is more inward or it's something that they are able to control is having a very narrow top of funnel. Yeah, so right. I see men and women saying they want a relationship. I really want to find a partner. I want to get married. I want to have kids. I want it to be, my life partner. But then their criteria for who they're willing to meet or go on a date with is incredibly narrow. And the criteria they are focusing on are not necessarily things that indicate whether or not that person is going to actually be a good partner. So that might be physical appearance. And I'm not you should be attracted to your partner. I'm not saying it doesn't matter what they look like. That would be ridiculous. But if you're saying I won't date bald guys, or I have to date somebody who's taller than me, or I only want to date a woman with a specific body type or with an ass. And these are all things I have heard from both men and women in different directions. Whether or not this person has an ass, whether or not this man has hair or his height is not a good indicator of whether or not he's actually going to be a good partner to you. So not going on a date or not getting to know somebody who checks other less superficial boxes is doing yourself a disservice. Or even whether it's I want to date someone who went to an Ivy League school or has a certain job. A lot of the things that make somebody a good partner and would make someone a good partner to you, man or woman, aren't measured by those, what school they went to, what job they have, what they look like. So my biggest piece of advice to anyone who actually wants to find a partner who they enjoy spending time with, who's going to be an add-on to their life, is cast a really wide net top of funnel. You should be going on anyone who asks you on a date and you get a good vibe from, you should go out with. You should meet them. Why not? This is one other human living their own existence in this world. Get to know them. It might not go anywhere, but what have you lost then? You've connected with another human being. You've learned something new. You've had fun, even if it's not a romantic relationship. I really encourage everyone to just take more chances.
Yeah. And that also opens you up maybe to someone else or another community.
Yeah,
or,
you just don't know where it could lead.
yeah.
Being more open generally to connections and possibility is going to serve you.
And then what about a question that you've been asked a lot, so I kind of apologize in advance, but approaching a woman, what's the best approach to approach?
Yeah, so I love that you asked this. I don't even mind talking about it because my mission in life is to get more people approaching. I want men to approach more women. I want women to approach more men. Whoever you're going after, just do more approaching because people are really scared of it.
Yeah.
We live in a world behind our phones where we want to interact through screens. I can't tell you how many clients will tell me, oh, I met this woman here or there. I found her on Instagram. Should I DM her? And I'm like, no, you should have talked to her in person. The moment has passed. Now wait till you see her again. Do not now find her online. So
Really? Come on.
you can.
What if you never see her again?
Okay, then you
slip in the DMs.
I'm not saying you can't. You absolutely can slip in the DMs, but if you're using it because you don't talk to women in person, that's a problem.
Yeah, right.
If you're just like, oh, I'm going to go find her online instead of just taking this opportunity, because if you stick your neck out more and you approach more a woman rather than shooting her the DM, you are going to get better results more often because you're now showing that you're confident. You can approach and have a good vibe and you can make her laugh. You're going to have a lot better shot than if you're one of 15 guys sliding into her DMs. What are you going to say in her DMs that's really going to be different? That's really going to make her laugh or be able to create a connection.
Yeah.
It's not really possible.
Yeah.
Where that is possible in real life. So how you approach really depends on where you're approaching. But some of my favorite lines or ways to approach are the simplest. You don't need to be a comedian. You don't need to have something super clever and get in your head about it. You can literally just say, hey, I've seen you here before. My name's Blaine. What's your name? Or I haven't seen you here before. My name's, that especially works if you're at one of those, I said, you should have hobbies, you should have interests that you spend time doing. If you're someplace that you go frequently, that's the easiest thing to say. If you are someplace that you don't go and you've made eye contact with her, you can literally use that. I feel like we made eye contact, so I wanted to come introduce myself. That's it. And I think people get it, what they get confused and wrong is like feeling like they have to have some amazing, witty, clever, meet cute opener setup when you don't at all. I did a survey of 13,000 women in the UK and the US, and I asked them about being approached. And I figured I knew people were interested in meeting offline. But 97% of women said they would rather meet their partner offline than online. And 95% of women said they wish they were approached more often in real life, which I thought was crazy.
Where do we go from there? So I come up to you, Blaine. Obviously, you're married and whatnot, so probably not the best situation, but
we can role play.
Let's assume not. Yeah. So I come up, I say, hey, I haven't seen you around here. My name's Aaron. What's your name?
And I'm like, my name's Blaine.
And then I'm freaking out because we're actually communicating. I'm like peeing my pants a little bit. I'm having an anxiety attack. Where do we go from here?
Well, that's the problem. That's what gets in people's way. Like if you're peeing your pants a little bit and you're having an anxiety attack, it's going to be really hard to have a conversation. And that's what happens if you approach one hot girl a month. Yeah. You're going to feel really freaking anxious when you do because you're not accustomed to it. But if you're approaching 3 people a day, I don't care if it's women, I don't care if it's men, I don't care if they're romantic interests, and you're just practicing creating connections, you're going to get way better and way more fluid. So then when you do approach that hot girl where you're like, damn, I want to potentially, chat with this girl. If it goes well, I want to ask for her number. You're not going to be as nervous. You just need to have a normal conversation with her. The other thing I see guys getting wrong is they approach, they're anxious, so then they say oh, I haven't seen you here before, and my name's Aaron. Okay, cool. Could I get your phone number?
I get really gassy when I approach a girl. What do you think about that?
I feel like that's more your area of expertise. What should you be eating something differently? I don't know. Doing some happy babies before you go out.
Too much fermented cabbage.
And that's the thing, rushing the ask without qualifying. So the point isn't oh, I'm going to go talk to this woman and get her phone number. The way you should think about it is I'm going to go talk to this woman to get to know her. And then if the vibe is right and she seems interested and we have a good chat, maybe then I'll ask for her phone number. But maybe I'll find out that she doesn't seem that interesting, or seems like she might have a boyfriend, or she doesn't seem interested in me or giving me the time of day. In that case, I'm going to just say, well, it was nice to meet you. Have a great day, and walk away.
How do we get to the coveted point of exchanging information?
So like I said, the talking about it, like just chatting first, you need to qualify. So when I say qualify, you should be talking to me to ascertain 3 things. 1, is it reasonable to assume I'm single? Okay, maybe in one conversation that's hard to tell, but like, am I wearing a wedding ring? If yes, okay, probably not single. If no, you can ask questions, especially if it's someone who you've talked to maybe before, you've seen them at the gym before, like, oh, what'd you get into this weekend? How was your holiday? That's an opportunity for that person to say, oh, well, my boyfriend and I, or my partner and I did this. So there are like, do they bring up somebody? If no, okay, you don't need to know for sure that they're single, but that's one sort of data point you want to be paying attention to. Second data point you want to pay attention to is, do we have things in common, or is this just a hot girl in spandex? Like, when you chat, have you connected over something? Like, are you talking about, the workout class and how it went, and you're both passionate about it, or the smoothie bar and making smoothies at home? Whatever it is, you're using your environment around you usually to dictate what you're talking about. So does it seem like you have things in common, or you have shared interests? Yeah. And then third, is she showing any interest in you? Is she smiling? Is she making eye contact? Is her body language facing you? Or is she trying to like turn away and walk away as you're talking? Yeah. So based on those 3 things, that's going to tell you whether or not you should then, well, it was really great chatting to you. I've got to run, but it'd be great to continue this conversation over drinks or coffee sometime. Make an ask. Instead, you don't need to just ask for her phone number, but an ask of doing something. Or maybe you've connected over tacos or smoothies or whatever. Well, it'd be fun to, explore that taco shop. Like, what if how would you feel about getting your phone number, and I'll text you about it? Yeah. And that's an opportunity to then exchange details.
I would think an advantageous approach for a person that wants to be more approachable or have a higher likelihood of there being like a feeling of connection or resonance with another person would be to become a more interesting version of yourself.
Yes. And you do that by doing more things, reading more things, being more interested.
Yeah.
The key to being interesting is being more interested oftentimes.
Yeah. How much is too much questions? How much is not enough questions? I find myself feeling very comfortable, which people usually like, but sometimes it can feel a little like I'm interviewing somebody because I'm genuinely interested. Mm-hmm. And I'm much more comfortable in the position of asking questions and like unpacking and learning more about a person. Mm-hmm. What's a balance in that with communication to a new person?
I would rather you be asking too many questions than not enough questions. I tell my clients to aim for 70-30 on a date, where she's talking 70% of the time. And you need to be careful with that. But usually when someone's asking too many questions, it's because they're jumping around from topic to topic and it's not a flow. But if you ask one question and then you ask a follow-up question about that thing, and then you ask how that thing made her feel, that's more of a conversation than like an interview style question. Yeah. So that's like, rather than how many questions is too many questions, I think the question you should be asking is, what types of questions are you asking? Are they facilitating a conversation, or is it rapid fire? Yeah. Because that's going to dictate how she feels about it. Yeah. And whether she's enjoying it.
And if it is rapid fire, it would probably be advantageous for the rapid fire person that might be doing that and just feeling anxious or uncomfortable to maybe make a joke about the fact that they're rapid fire questions.
Yeah, if you realize you're doing it, that can diffuse the situation.
Yeah. There's a gal called Annie Lala that I recently did a podcast with. I think it just went out like maybe a month ago or so. And one of the things that she said that I thought was really great was, whether you're in a relationship with a person or not, treat that person as though they are the one. And if they either are the one, it would like open up into that, or it's preparation for cultivating yourself to be prepared for the one. And similarly, treat every woman, or if you're a guy, every like feminine that you come in contact with, as though, how did she say it? She said it's like, people can just listen to the episode, but as though they are like email friends with the one out there somewhere. And so every person that you communicate with, treating them with the reverence that you would the sister or the mother or the daughter of the one, the quote unquote the one, and imagine that like after that interaction, they're going to send a message out to that person, be like, wow, Aaron's done pretty good. He's a pretty stand-up guy.
Wow, I love that and that's just how you should treat everybody.
Yeah, man or woman in general. Like, treat everyone
age
as though
doesn't matter. With respect, with interest, with enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And I think another key reason that is helpful is because it's going to be really hard. This goes back to like what I said about approaching you. It's hard to just turn it on then when you do meet the one or when you are approaching the hot girl to just like all of a sudden become this person and be really charming out of nowhere. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
You need to just become the charming guy, the interested guy, the guy who treats everybody with respect. So then when that woman is noticing you or watching you, she sees you treating other people that way, and you naturally treat her that way, and it doesn't feel forced. Because women have a sixth sense for guys faking it. So if you are putting on an act, a well-adjusted, in my opinion, mature woman, it's probably not going to fool her for long.
What is the dating experience for a person that it would be, if there was some quantitative like ranking, like, oh, he's a 10 or a 8 or a 6 or whatever, which is obviously really subjective and probably really hurtful in a lot of ways. But for a person that would, in like the socioeconomic sexual hierarchy of things, what's the dating experience for a person that's like a 9 or a 10 compared to a person that's like a 4 or a 5?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually use these number scales a lot when I'm talking in my courses or to my clients, but I'm very clear. A 10 doesn't mean, oh, she's really hot only. When I say a 10, this means someone that you personally are really attracted to, who is smart, who is caring, who treats you with respect. So that's not just about appearance, but I think the number rankings are actually helpful for determining how interested you are in any one person. And like you said, it's subjective. It depends on the person. But yeah, the dating. So when I think of somebody who's on the high end of the scale, they take care of themselves physically. So I don't, every people, especially women, have different preferences on what that means you look like physically, but you take care of yourself. You respect your body. You fuel your body well. You are active, whatever. And that doesn't mean you necessarily have a six-pack, but you're thinking about yourself in that way. You spend time investing in yourself in other ways. So doing things you care about outside of work. I don't care if that's taking your dog to dog shows or, playing pickleball or making pottery, anything at all, but you have hobbies outside of work. Ideally, you do something professionally that you enjoy. I wouldn't say that's but a 10 would, it's not like a requirement to be a desirable human, but if you're spending 8 hours a day doing something that makes you miserable, what does that say about like how you prioritize yourself?
Yeah.
So those are, and then you treat other people with respect. You, like you said, you treat everybody as if they're the one or they're 1 degree removed from the one. That's how you go about interacting with the world. So I'd say some of those qualities are what makes somebody like an 8 or a 9 or 10 versus, and then like going down from there is just you're not invested in those areas. You don't meet those thresholds.
It seems like dating for someone that is not in the upper, 10, 20% of that hierarchy is probably frustrating, would be my guess, based off of like, I know that you've heard of like the statistic, the 80-20 Tinder study, where it's like 80% of women are vying for 20% of men. Then it remains it's like 80% of men that are just like WTF. And then the inverse of that. What do people do in that situation? Because I feel like if you're quote unquote hot and you're quote unquote successful and you're moderately funny and you don't smell that bad, that's probably like a much more convenient position to be in of feeling like safe and secure. Not always. Oftentimes those people are the least secure, and that's the reason that they're in that position is because of compensation. But barring that, for the people that are not in that situation and they fall into that kind of like the disadvantageous side of the 80-20 Tinder study, what can they do.
Yeah.
It's like that would seem frustrating. Like I'm 6'5" and fairly symmetrical.
Yeah.
And I'm able
So you're in
to,
the 20%.
I'm able to communicate.
Yeah.
And I feel frustrated. And like I feel hopeless sometimes.
Yeah.
And I feel those things. And I'm like, God, like I'm fucking weak. like I've got the cards.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I have these same sensations.
Yeah, well, I think those are two separate things. Like how you feel and you're like saying you recognize like, okay, I have a lot of these advantages is separate from like, okay, what is it like for somebody who is sort of in like the mediocre bucket or the bottom, you know, even let alone 80% bottom 60 or 50%. I think there's two things that come to mind with that is one, you are going to be able to date people roughly where you fall on that sort of spectrum. So where I think people tend to get frustrated is if you're, and again, I'm using these numbers as like a whole picture of who they are. If you're a 5 and you're trying to date 9s, you're going to be frustrated because you're not going to get 9s. But if you're trying to date other 5s, you'll probably do okay.
What if you really want 9s?
Then you need to level yourself up. And that's the good news is all of those things I just described, taking care of yourself, having a job you're interested in, having hobbies you're interested in, treating people with respect and integrity and being charismatic. These are learnable, changeable things in your life. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't mean going to the gym one time. It means changing your life and you will be able to attract quality people who are also working to change their lives or who are in that level.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd say about that. And then addressing your frustrations with dating, you know, wherever you fall on that, in that scale, dating is challenging. Dating is hard. I think dating is harder today than it has ever been before.
Why?
I think a lot of it comes down to technology. I think it has given people the impression that dating should be easier, but it's actually made it harder for us to connect with one another. We're so accustomed to convenience in our lives. You pick up your phone, you use an app, any food you want is on your doorstep in 30 minutes. Packages, anything from Amazon arrives the same day. Stream anything you want at any given time. You never have to wait. You don't even have to work for it or talk to anybody, convince anybody to give it to you. It's just there. So you get on a dating app. You expect I should spend 30 minutes swiping and a hot girl should show up on my couch. It's not, that's wouldn't be dissimilar from how everything else in your life is going.
Sounds awesome.
And that's not how it works.
Damn it.
Dating is inconvenient. You have to put yourself out of your comfort zone. You have to stick your neck out. You have to face rejection. You have to meet a lot of people. And I think so that in and of itself creates a challenge. But then when a lot of the other people you want to meet are also living in this mindset that they're sitting on their couch waiting for somebody to show up, it's like, okay, how do I now find those people? You know, there's less people to connect with and less people to looking for connections out in the world because so many people are assuming that this connection is going to happen from behind a screen.
How do we approach dating apps most effectively as a guy and a gal?
Yeah, so with both men and women, I'm not anti-dating app. Let's make you the best possible app.
Which ones are the good ones?
So the most popular ones, Hinge, Bumble.
Grindr.
Yeah, I mean, for gay people, yes. I work with all men who are approaching women, so I'm not as familiar. But
good app.
I would say Hinge and Bumble are the two most popular that have a decent level of intent. I think Tinder has slightly lower intent. You're going to have more spam on there. You're going to have more people who aren't necessarily looking for relationships. But especially abroad or in smaller areas, it has a really wide user base. So it can be worth exploring. The League, Raya.
Something I don't know or understand about dating apps. I've never had any success with dating apps. I don't find them to be that valuable.
What do you mean when you say you haven't had success?
Finding somebody on a dating app that was actually like, oh, cool. Like the only people that I've ever connected with in any meaningful way has always been in person or through a friend or I find Instagram to be a good dating app because that's like something where you're seeing more of a person. You're like, oh, cool, this is what they do. And you can see like in their stories, like, wow, they're like in their house, you know, doing whatever it is they do. So you get like a more authentic interpretation of the person compared to with the dating app. You get the 6 photos or 5 photos, whatever they do, you know, and it's been very rare that I've met someone in my history of using dating apps that I've met the person in person and them be at all like what they seemed in the dating app.
Yeah.
What would be, I'd imagine you probably have a sense of like the orientation of different dating apps is like Hinge or Tinder or Bumble or Raya. Would there be different demographics of people that would be appropriate for them? Like one might be looking more for hookups, one might be looking more for like long-term committed relationships, or is it all just kind of a shit show?
I would say more so all of a shit show than having like very specific rules, because you're going to find people who are just looking for hookups or people who are really looking for that long-term committed relationship on any of these apps. And it's really a numbers game. You're going to have to, whatever you're looking for, you're going to have to go through a lot of people and profiles to, to even get in front of possibilities of people who are looking for the same thing.
Can I share a hack that I think would be a great approach, and also probably not something to share out loud? I haven't actually done this, but I like this idea in theory. I'm sure you've heard this, hire an assistant to go through
People do this
apps.
all the time.
Yeah, hire an assistant to go through the dating apps and extract like, here's actually 10 possible matches for you. So as opposed to you, and you could hire an assistant for $25 or whatever, and go through and then aggregate like a batch of potential matches for you, as opposed to you wasting away your life force swiping mindlessly.
Yeah, I know people who have done that. There's services that do that. Yeah, because it's such a numbers game.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Is that like are you a terrible person if you do that?
No, I don't think so at all. But I think what I would say is just like spend more time meeting people offline. If like if you're finding the app soul sucking and like.
It's so soul sucking.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Swiping, Xing.
Some people really I feel like people, it's not necessarily that they like it. Yeah, but it's giving them like the social media fix.
Yeah.
The dopamine hits.
Yeah. It's also like the potential of, that's like classic conditioning. That's what makes a person be the most addicted to a thing, including exposure to blue light and like a lack of exposure to like nature and sunlight and all that stuff. That also puts you in a more, dopamine seeking orientation. But having like the potential chance of a hit and then a loss, a hit, a loss, a loss. So that's the quintessential addictive activity. And that's what,
and that's what they're designed to do. They spent billions of dollars figuring out how to create that feeling for you. Yeah. And it gives the illusion that you're doing something productive for your dating life. And so, to kind of tying the approach and the dating app together here, I encourage people, actually, I call it an approach journal. Write down how many people who are seemingly, in the category of people you're looking to meet, relationship-wise, you're talking to on a daily or weekly basis. Because it's probably not even happening daily if you're like the average person. Is it even happening weekly? Yep. But the idea and using the dating apps give this impression like, I'm spending so much time investing in my dating life. I don't know why it's not working. And it's like, are you though? Yeah. Are you actually talking to people? Are you spending time in areas of interest where you can meet like-minded individuals? Holding yourself accountable and writing that down usually illuminates, oh shoot, I'm really not.
What about more strategy? What is the which sounds kind of icky, I apologize, but strategy, still going to lean into it. Dating app, you're sending out 30 messages to randos. What is the ideal, most effective first message to send to someone?
Well, backing up, I would be remiss not to mention really the most important and are almost the only thing that matters on a dating app is that you have good photos. If you have shitty photos, you can send the best, funniest message in the world, and it's never going to land. So you have to first address your photos, which, let me just tell you, 95% of profiles from men who come into me aren't doing. Maybe it's a B-, but it's rarely before I work with them an A. And really, if you want to be in that top 20%, you have to have an A+ profile.
A lot of pictures with puppies, turtles.
Maybe at least one puppy photo. Get a puppy in there. Is recommended.
Yeah. Don't be clenching it too hard.
Yeah, don't look like you're trying to suffocate it.
Yeah, like a sweet pet.
Doesn't hurt to have a puppy photo thrown in there. Yep. And then the message is...
Well, what should the photos be?
Okay, so your photos should give a snapshot of what it would be like to spend time with you. So your first photo, I just want to know what you look like. And that's going to determine right then if she looks at the rest of your profile or if she says no. If she can't tell what you look like, she's not even looking at the rest of your profile. She needs to very clearly be able to see this.
Sometimes people have like silhouettes on there. I'm like,
or
what the
sunglasses
freak are
or
you
the
doing?
back of their head. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So high quality, good photo. And then the other, you need a body photo. I need to see what you look like. Sometimes I have clients.
How much body?
What?
How much body?
I mean, full body.
A lot of body.
I want to see the full body. I want to know like what's going on here. I have clients who are like, oh, they're like, I can't tell if this like person I matched with is overweight. I'm like, if you're asking me that question because you can't see her body, she's overweight.
How much body like skin exposure is appropriate?
I'm more like about. I'm not anti shirt off photos, but your shirt off photo, you better have a good reason for having your shirt off. Like you're about to jump off a waterfall or you're surfing.
So if you're just
I hate
flexing,
it. I hate it so much.
Not a good thing.
No, not a good thing.
What
The
is
mirror
that?
selfie, the gym selfie.
I love a mirror selfie every day. That's my morning mantra.
But not on your
Mirror selfie.
dating app photo.
You're good enough.
Keep those in your personal spank bank, whatever you need to do, Aaron. But not for the dating apps.
God dang it. What are other examples of photos? Puppy
So
photo,
the rest,
body photo,
lifestyle.
Yeah.
What are those hobbies? I talked about this earlier, and I sometimes want people to be, well, I don't really have any hobbies. It's okay. Well, that's going to be challenging in your dating life. What are you going to talk about on dates? What are you going to spend your time doing outside of going on dates? Those are the things I want to also see in your dating app profile. Whatever hobbies and interests you have, get some photos doing that. Get a photo of traveling from a trip. Maybe you have a photo with your grandma. A group photo is often helpful, just one.
What if you have a photo with Trump? Should do a Trump
If you
photo?
only want, if you want to
Trump.
optimize for only dating women who are going to be okay with that, then hell yeah, put that up there. But if you want to optimize wider and you don't actually really care her political preferences, no political photos, no political comments. Don't even put your political affiliation on your profile.
What are the things you should be looking at in another person's profile? Guide to a girl.
Effort.
Effort.
Like, I find that effort in their dating app profile often correlates to the effort that they are going to put into then responding to their messages and go, like, whether or not they go on a date. If someone just throws up some, thirst traps and no real info about themselves, they're more likely looking for validation or attention and like those matches just to make them feel good. But if someone has taken the time to share their interests and their values and what it would be like to date them, they're more likely to be, they've put those things because they want to optimize for finding somebody who they can connect with.
Yeah. What about first date suggestions? Once you guys are engaged, how long before asking for a date do you? I think I've heard you say you don't like this, which I don't think I agree with this. Not that I would trust my opinion on things like this, but I think I've heard you say that you don't love the idea of FaceTiming before going on a date. I don't think I agree with you on that.
So what I would say is it's not a necessary part of the process for most of my clients.
Yeah.
If it's going to be a long time from the time you connect to the time you're able to go on a date because one or both of you is traveling, or you have some doubts that this person, definitely if you have doubts that this person is who they say they are or look like what they say they're going to, what they look like, then I would say do a FaceTime. And it's not that I inherently have a problem with it, but I think it's really hard to check a vibe and a connection via FaceTime as opposed to just planning a really lightweight date, take 30 minutes, go on a little walk, get a cup of coffee, grab a cocktail, get a beer, and see how you vibe in person.
My ideal first date with someone, unless I'm very confident. If I'm like confident, I'm like, oh yeah, this like we have friends of friends. I've seen lots. I have a lot of data around the person.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, okay, we can do something that's going to be like more rad.
Yeah.
And I'll like invest in it.
Exactly.
But if it's something that I'm like, I really don't know. She's kind of cute. She seems, fun, whatever. My first date approach would be typically something like you said, like a walk around
lightweight
Lady Bird Lake or something.
I
or
count that date 0.
Yeah. Or something that I would like another thing that I would do would be something that I would want to do anyway that's mutually beneficial for both of us. So a lot of first dates that I've had, which this is a little bit more of an investment, but still not that much, would be like, let's go like paddleboarding or something. Because regardless, I want to go jump in the water and paddleboard. And if she's like, totally boring and there's no chemistry at all, I can just swim and like paddle around and have a great
Swim
time
away from her.
and just swim away. Then we get back like, cool, like that was great. We're both a little healthier.
Yeah.
We got to like
We're
laugh,
both a little
and, laugh
tanner.
and maybe we're a little bit more tan.
Good
and
luck
we're,
out
we're
there.
better
Bye.
versions of ourselves.
Yeah.
Good luck. What do you think is the best approach?
I
for
think
date
that's the
zero?
exact right strategy. If you meet somebody online specifically and you really don't know this person, like you said, they can be totally different than their profile and what texting them feels like. That's another reason that you don't want to text forever before you meet up. Don't waste all this time texting and creating this false sense of connection when there may or may not be any vibe in person. So I call that, especially with online, like just plan date zero, just a vibe check, just meet in person, anything lightweight. Like I said, coffee, drinks, food truck, walk, dog park, something that you want to do anyway. And then you build from there. And you can set that expectation. It's like, you can say, I like to keep first dates pretty lightweight. So we can see if there's a connection here. What do you think of grabbing drinks at this place?
I hate grabbing drinks.
Oh, but it doesn't have to be alcoholic drinks.
The worst date possible for me is sitting on a square table with a square fucking chair and sitting across from each other and just looking at each other, interrogating each other.
Okay, well, for the record, when I was saying drinks, I was more envisioning like a cute bar, side by side, like really yummy cocktails,
yummy
sexy
cocktails.
lighting.
Oh, wow. I like good lighting.
Yeah, good. And that's, I think, something that guys who, if you struggle, if you consistently hear, oh, I didn't feel a romantic connection, and you're like taking girls on walks or to get a coffee, like those aren't great environments for making romantic connections.
Oh, interesting.
So maybe plan something that can be a little bit sexier, that is at nighttime where the lights are low. And again, because I rarely drink, and I think drinking culture is kind of going to the wayside. More people are more health conscious and drinking less.
Yeah.
When I say drinks, it doesn't even have to be like, oh, we're going to get alcohol.
I think
there's so many good mocktails, kava bars.
Yeah.
Like there's other like types of drinks to have
You
together.
could find a nice TP and do a little ayahuasca.
I don't know about that on a first date. That made me be like date 50.
Date 50 ayahuasca? TP ayahuasca date? Have you done ayahuasca?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
How was that?
Amazing. That's why I'm like, I'm not against it, but right time, right place.
What was your experience like?
My experience was amazing.
Huh.
I found it to be, for me, it was very, very positive. I know a lot of people have like a death moment, and I didn't have that. I had, for lack of a better description, rainbows and butterflies.
Did you only do it once?
I've done it twice.
In one weekend or two different?
Two separate times.
How many
for
sits did you do in each one?
One.
Oh, it was just one.
Which I was conscious about, which I felt very satiated after one. And like I got the downloads I was looking for in that one. I think for the first time it was like, okay, I don't want to overcommit. I would like to just do this one. And from what I had learned, people often said like if you're doing it for 2 nights, you'll get what you need in 2 nights. If you do it for 1 night, you'll get what you need in 1 night.
Yeah.
And I felt that to be true.
Yeah.
Have you done it?
Yeah. I've done maybe, I don't know, a handful of times.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about age gaps?
Age is just a number, but you tend to have more in common with people closer to your age.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying
I'm 37. What do you think my ideal range of age? Obviously, just a number, but what do you think would be like? And I'm very immature, obviously.
obviously.
Yeah.
I would say 28 to 42, 41, depending on your goals.
Yeah. What do you think about younger than that?
I think if that's fun, you have a connection, I think you're less likely to share mutual experiences, and you're more likely to be at different points in your life.
Yeah.
If you're looking for your wife, then a 25-year-old still has a lot of self-discovery to do, most likely, before she's going to be ready to settle down.
Yeah.
But if you're like looking for a fun time and someone to just, kick it with and have fun with, then, if she's 23, then so be it. But, and again, I'm making generalizations here. These are massive generalizations. There could be a 23-year-old who's ready to settle down, and there could be a 33-year-old who's nowhere near ready to settle down. But it just, in practice, what I have seen.
How could you, I don't think you'll be able to answer this question, and I don't know that I could either, but how could one detect subtle, like subterranean red flags that haven't shown themselves in the limerence phase of relationship, like the romantic honeymoon time, where you're just like, oh my god, like everything is great, you're perfect, we pedestalize each other, this is so awesome, and then 8 months later you're like, oh, now we're starting to actually see, the parts that we've been covering. Do you have any suggestions of how to maybe like fast forward that and be able to be more sensitive to seeing each other?
Yeah, so couple things here. First is that there's a certain amount that cannot be fast forwarded.
Yep.
And by trying to fast forward it, you're going to miss other crucial parts of the relationship. So like seeking out the red flags also isn't going to be beneficial.
You can probably create red flags.
Sorry?
You can probably create red flags.
Yes, exactly.
You can find whatever you're seeking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you should pay attention to the actions that are happening. I think oftentimes people will say like, oh, the writing was on the wall, and hindsight's 20/20, of course, but how does she treat you? How does he make you feel? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Don't overlook subtleties in how you're feeling or things that are happening because you're in that honeymoon phase and because you feel like everything is perfect.
Yeah.
Just being realistic that it's never all perfect. And that's okay, but you need to determine if the imperfections are things you can live with and work through, or if they're deal breakers for you.
So we're on our first date. We're pulling up to the teepee. We're about to do our ayahuasca date, probably just a micro.
Yes.
How can a guy show up the best for a woman or girl to make her feel the most safe, supported, loved, cherished, cared for? And is that important?
I don't know. On a first date, as the man or the woman, your job is not to make the other person necessarily feel cherished and supported. Yeah, you want them to feel safe, and you want them to feel seen, and you want them to have fun.
Yeah.
I would say optimizing, safety first and foremost. That's almost like a given. You don't want to make anyone feel unsafe. And I say for most guys, it's kind of like being creepy. The guys who are worried about being creepy aren't the ones who are creepy generally. It's the guys who aren't even thinking about that as a possibility that end up being the ones who say or do creepy things.
Yeah.
Like my clients are like, oh, I don't want to be creepy. I'm like, we're falling too far the other way where you're giving no sexual energy. You're not being creepy. Don't worry about that.
Friend zone.
That's where that comes into play oftentimes.
What are the initial, so something that I feel very grateful for in my own life is the things that I have invested myself into are touch related. So I professionally do body work, massage therapy, manual therapy, and all that stuff. And most activities are kind of active related things. We're doing things that might involve, maybe I'll pick you up and put you on something or whatever.
Yeah.
I do acro yoga. Where we pick a person up and twist them and stretch them, and then we're breathing together, and it's creating attunement and rapport and trust and safety, and also kind of somewhat like a peak experience.
Love
where you're
that.
oh my god, this is a little dangerous, but wow, he really freaking is solid and has me. Those I find to be incredible hacks. That before I had that, I remember who I was before that in relation to dating, and it was very clunky and very uncomfortable to actually get to the point of contacting a girl, and then to eventually get to the point of maybe kissing a girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would just be an awkward, I'd get super drunk, and just disoriented.
Yeah.
And then eventually I'd just be can I kiss you?
Yeah.
Just terrible. And so
I bet a lot of people can relate to that.
I would imagine. And so I've found that for me personally, leaning into activities that create a safe container for safe touch non-sexualized touch opens up the foundation for now we've broken the seal or the barrier of like, oh, cool, we touch each other. Great. Once you touch each other, now we have a foundation of that, and it's not weird to like have more touch, and that can escalate into whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that as like in your toolkit in dating, how does a person bridge the gap of actually like making contact with the opposite sex?
I fully agree with everything you just said, and it is important to plan activities that are going to be easier for touch. But backing up from that, let's say, because we said, okay, well, people are probably saying, well, Blaine, how would you do that? You said keep the first date lightweight, don't do anything too active, you know?
Yeah.
How do I then bridge the touch gap? You need to be really intentional with it. I have an entire video in one of my courses about initiating physical touch, because especially for people who are more introverted and shy, it can be and they're not touchy-feely people, it can be really challenging. But it is essential for creating sexual and emotional connections and not getting the, oh, you're really nice, I think you're a really great guy, but I just don't feel the romantic connection. That means the intimacy part is missing. And you can't have the intimacy part if you're not touching. And so you need to be conscientious of it from the very beginning. You want to break that touch barrier. Because once you've broken it, like you said, it's much easier. And you don't have to be doing acro yoga if you're not, you know, or you don't have to be like a gymnast to do this. But as simple as creating familiarity when you arrive, giving her a hug, giving her a kiss on the cheek if that's natural for you. Structuring a date when you said your worst nightmare is sitting across the table from somebody, no physical touch ability.
I like a booth.
Yeah, sitting in a booth, sitting at a
booth
chairs, bar seats next to each other. Your elbows can touch. You can, no way, touch her knee as she's saying something. There's also the pre-touch touch, where if you're really uncomfortable with it, or maybe you're not even on a date, you're just like meeting somebody or getting to know them at an event or something, you might put your hand up like, wow, that's so interesting. But you're not actually even touching them. It's just you're reaching in their direction. But elbows tend to be very safe places to touch. Hands tend to be safe places to touch. As you get to know somebody, you know, you move inwards towards their core. So like knee is safer than thigh. Elbow is safer than shoulder or back. Lower back is more intimate. So you build from there. And the mistake a lot of guys make is they do no physical touching, and then it gets to the end of the date and they're like, oh, I need to kiss her to make a romantic connection. And then the kiss is awkward. And it's like the first time you're kissing her the first time you're touching her shouldn't be for the kiss. You should have been building up to this the entire time. And you can also start to build up to that without even physical touch, but by holding eye contact, by looking at her, like glancing at her mouth and looking back at her eyes, by leaning in closer, by putting your hand on the table closer to hers. These are all ways that aren't even necessarily physically touching, but you're creating that vibe and moving in that direction.
I like that. Are there any other suggestions that you would have on a first date to make it like more fun, more spontaneous, more like if you really care about a person, like once you're at a point where you're like, okay, like I actually like this person, can we incorporate some danger into it? Can we incorporate like how do we
for a later date?
Date two.
I'd say date two, depending on what your first date is, definitely date three. I love an activity. So some of the things like you mentioned, paddleboarding, acro yoga, even like a paint and sip where you're like, you know, painting on a canvas together, cooking together, doing a pottery class, sharing a paddleboard. These are all things that are going to allow you both to be slightly out of your element. I think it's kind of nice when both parties are trying something new. So you're getting to see each other in an environment that they aren't necessarily totally comfortable. And that's also going to create opportunities for flirting, for teasing, for joking around. And ultimately the goal of dating, any date should be to have fun. Like, you know, if you're going into a date, how can I impress this woman? How can I make her think that I'm great? You're approaching dating from, you know, we talked about this at the beginning, from a place of I don't feel good enough. Whereas if you're like, I am who I am, she's either going to like me or she's not, I'm just going to make sure we have fun either way, then you're going to be better off.
What about money?
What about money? It's nice.
How does that come into dating as far as like, Is it the responsibility of the guy to cover everything? Or should the guy, if you're going out on a date someplace, should he buy her a dress? You know, like to what degree?
What's the appropriate level?
What's the appropriate level? What's too much?
My opinion is that the man should be paying for the first few dates.
Sure.
And that is really from the perspective of, like, I'm not talking about what's fair, or like what makes sense, like who asked who out. I'm just saying, if you want to give yourself the best possible shot, pay for the date. It's just like what is often expected.
Yeah.
And even if she doesn't expect it, it's still going to be a nice gesture. Outside of that, though, you shouldn't be paying for her Uber to get to the date. I have guys ask me that all the time. Oh, this girl asked me to Venmo her so she could like get an Uber to the date. No.
That'd be a red flag.
Yeah. We can go ahead and call that a red flag.
You can't fucking get yourself to the date.
Yeah. Like, you want someone who's like incompetent.
You're a child.
Yeah, no. You shouldn't be paying for anything outside of the date itself. And then, in my opinion, for the women listening, you should be off, especially, I'm okay, let the guy pay for the first couple, but then maybe he gets dinner and you say, like, let me treat us to drinks or ice cream after. Yeah. How can you start also contributing? And then after the first few dates, it's so dependent on the relationship. Some people want more traditional roles, and the women will want a guy who is going to pay for all of the dates.
Yeah.
Until further notice. And some guys are going to want to do that. They want to be the provider. And then other people are going to feel more comfortable 50-50. And you have to find a balance that works for both of you there. And if you are out of balance, that might just mean it's not a good fit.
Yeah.
If you're a man and you want a woman who is comfortable paying for half of the date and like supports herself.
Sounds terrible.
Then and she doesn't, and the woman doesn't want to do that, then that's not a good fit.
I think the ideal relationship fit from a financial perspective would be, and please correct me if you have different perspective, but would be the man provides and is able to provide and chooses to provide and actually really feels rewarding and good. It's like, it makes him feel good. And the woman doesn't need him to provide.
Yeah, I think that's my personal preference.
Yeah.
And I think the ideal.
Yeah.
And I think also it's important to remember people bring different things to the relationship. But if a woman is expecting a man to provide, that's also really unattractive in my opinion. Like, expects that it's just a given or it feels entitled to it versus like, wow, I really appreciate that and I enjoy feeling taken care of. Those are two different vibes.
What would that indicate in a woman? If she has an expectation of it.
I mean, in my opinion, it indicates entitledness, some lack of self-awareness or appreciativeness and gratitude, where it's nice if somebody's doing that, but it's not a requirement. And there's also a give and take. So maybe he, is taking you to dinner, but you invite him over and you make dinner, or you plan a surprise date here and there. I think if a woman is doing nothing, that's also a turnoff, or at least it would be to me if I was a man. Like, even if I was comfortable paying for everything, if she didn't reciprocate at all and want to provide in different ways, even if it's like an emotional way.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. It's like, if you don't have, it's okay to not have financial resources. It's not a problem at all. But it's more of like creating an energetic balance with each other. And so if there's one person that they have the belief system that's like, well, I'm pretty, and so that's like what I'm providing to this experience, that would be like an incredible turnoff and really imbalance. It would lead to a lot of probably like fires in the future. But if it's like, I actually would really love to be able to support at this point in my life, I'm not able to do the things, I'm not able to contribute in the way that like to actually balance financially, but I made us peanut butter sandwiches and I meticulously cut the crusts off, or I
planned this free date night and I'm going to plan a date to the movie, like the movie in the park or something where you're still doing thoughtful things. Yeah.
Or I'm like really good at quality time, or I'm really good at some like acts of service, or I'm really good at leaning into other ways to provide value, but not value like bartering value, just value like it's
in the relationship.
It's an indication that I care. And I think that's the big thing for a guy. It can feel very terrible, which I've experienced some of this as well in dating experience, to feel like, oh, I'm just kind of feel like I'm being used.
Yeah.
And you would be open to doing this as long as you don't need to invest anything, but you wouldn't be open to doing it if there was like any investment on your end, which isn't a very gratifying feeling. For a guy.
It's the imbalance.
Yeah.
That you said.
And then what else would be relevant information in relation to dating, questions that you're not asked typically, or any other places that you feel like would be important for people to have under their belt?
I also, sort of like how I feel like my life calling right now is like approach more people, like talk to more people. I would also say if you go on a first date with somebody and you enjoyed their company and you found them interesting and thoughtful, but you're not sure it's a romantic connection, take the second date. It can take 2 or 3 dates to feel some of those sparks and that chemistry. It does not need to be fireworks from the first time you met or from the first date. And oftentimes, fireworks aren't a good indication of a long-term healthy relationship anyway. The slow burn is okay. And I think we're so accustomed to movies and that instant gratification we get online that we expect things to be quick and instantaneous and to feel it. And I think a lot of people are missing out on what could be really good relationships by not saying like, I'm going to give this another shot and I'm going to see if it builds. Yeah. And I'm not saying that, like, again, you should be dating someone you're not interested in. Yeah. But it's just be open-minded in it and then give it a shot to get going. Because a lot of guys, when they go on a first date, are really nervous. Women too. So they're not necessarily, they're not doing the physical touch enough and they aren't creating that connection because they're just focused on being there because maybe they aren't that experienced.
Yeah. How soon, I feel like you're probably going to know what I'm asking, or should 2 people end up engaging in like sensual touch and sex? Obviously, it's a very variable question.
Yeah, that goes back to, kind of what I said before about relationships. There's plenty of happily married couples who had sex on the first date. There's also happily married couples who abstained until they were married.
You think that's generally a bad idea to have sex on the first date?
I would say if you are interested in a long-term relationship with this person, you are better off not having sex until you have also created an emotional connection. Yep. I think when you have emotional connections, you have sexual connections, and you have intellectual connections. I think those are the 3 main ones. And when one is very out of balance with the others, it's oftentimes when things don't work out. So like, let's say you have only an intellectual connection. That's when you hear like, oh, I don't feel the romantic spark. Let's say like you get way ahead with the sexual connection, but the emotional connection isn't there. That doesn't often feel very good either. And I feel like it can lead to people feeling like almost like sex can be awkward, that like it's not always good the first time, and then it's very easy to be like, okay, well, I'm just gonna like walk away from this. Whereas if you have an emotional connection first, one, I feel like the sex is more likely to be better. And then if it is a little awkward the first time, you still like this person, you're gonna give them the benefit of the doubt and continue to explore it.
What would be keys to have unawkward sex?
Communication. I tell my clients, if you're not comfortable talking about the thing you're going to do to her or with her, it's too soon. So if you can't talk about having sex, it's because you feel too uncomfortable with it, it's too soon to have sex. I think that can be a helpful gauge. Because oftentimes the hottest part of or how you are going to have a good hookup is understanding what they like. You're not just blindly doing the things that you like or that other partners have liked. You want to be able to talk about like, do you like this? Do you like that? How does this feel? And if you don't feel comfortable enough to ask those questions, then it's going to be really hard to deliver on what they actually want.
I love this. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, for making time to do this. As I go off into this dating frontier within myself, is there any particular suggestions you would provide to me specifically?
I think you had mentioned, which I think is really inspiring, that you're intentionally not filling the void of being single with just girls and sex and attention and validation from apps. So I love that you are conscious conscientious of taking that space to be comfortable alone before you start investing in dating again. I think that's A+ and really good advice for anybody who finds themselves single. And then from there, I think, you have a lot of those qualities I mentioned. You have interests that you're excited about in your life. You have passions. You have
puppies.
You have like puppies. You have a job that's interesting. So I think you're going to do just fine. But lean into those offline categories I mentioned, and I'd be happy to look at your dating app profile when the time is right.
All right, we can set that up. My dating app profile hasn't been updated for
give it an update and I'll look at it.
I need to probably do a little freshening up on.
I'd be happy to help.
The old dating app. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was a fun conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate you. So you have programs and you have your social media.
I've got courses. Yeah, follow me on Dating by Blaine across all social platforms. Easy, just Dating by Blaine. And then I have an approach course. I have an online dating course. I have a texting course. And then I have my dating masterclass, which covers everything you need to know from meeting women to forming relationships.
How much time should we have between texts? If somebody texts you, like,
the most important thing,
I want to see you right now.
The thing that people get wrong with texting is if you have something value add to say, she's not gonna be like, ew, this guy's texting me so fast. Because if you're like making her laugh or it's something valuable. Right. Where you get into trouble texting is when you're texting just to text. In which case you need to pump the brakes. I am a big advocate of less is more when it comes to texting, and that you're more likely to text yourself out of a date than into one. So especially early on in a relationship, keep texting to logistics, because I'm touched on this before. It creates a false sense of connection, and then you might meet up with this person and you're like, oh, they're nothing like they were over text, and it's like, well, you didn't actually know what they were like via text. Yeah, that was an illusion.
Yeah, right.
So get in front of people, spend time in person.
Cool.
Save the texting for logistics.
All right. That's it. That's all. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next week.